Hi, I'm Grace Mahari, fashion model and founder of nonprofit Project Sahai, and you're in the stream.
Hi, I'm Femi Oke. Today we discuss why Macedonians are at odds over a proposed name change for the country, a move that could lead to EU membership.
So, what's in a name? I'm Malika Bilal. Tweet us your thoughts or leave them in our live YouTube chat, and you too could be in the stream.
Macedonia's future remains uncertain, and that's after a referendum to rename the country failed.
Voters overwhelmingly voted on Sunday in favor of changing the name to North Macedonia. In fact, more than 90% of voters supported the change, but only 37% of the electorate voted, a number well below the 50% needed to make the outcome valid.
The issue now moves to Parliament, where the Prime Minister has vowed to push ahead. Now, if the name change goes through, Greece has agreed to end its veto of Macedonia's membership to the EU and NATO.
I know, the opposition knows, all the citizens know. There is and there can be no better agreement with Greece. There is and there can be no alternative to Macedonia's membership of NATO and EU. Let's not play games with our unity and our Macedonia.
So how much does it matter what you call your country? In our studio to discuss this, we have Vera Lalcheska. She's the founder and director of Joint Macedonian NGO's Representative Office to the United Nations. In Skopje, Macedonia, Bojan Maracic. He's the Special Advisor of the Prime Minister for Euro-Atlantic Integration. And in Athens, Greece, we have Panos Polozoidis. He's a political analyst and journalist. It's good to have you here, everybody. I'm going to start with a little bit of geography and not too much history. So I'm going to show you the area around Greece, the Republic of Macedonia. We're going to go in a little bit closer. I will show you the Republic of Macedonia and then a little dotted line that will show you the region of Macedonia. Now you're prepared. Let me show you the map. Have a look. So here we go, going into the region, that white block you see there, Republic of Macedonia, country that exists right now, and that little dotted line is the region of Macedonia, and you can see how many countries the region of Macedonia covers, hence an issue. So if you call yourself the Republic of Macedonia, but you're in an area that is known as Macedonia as a region, and then there's one country in particular that says, hey, that Macedonia belongs to us, that could be problematic. It is problematic. Right, Malika?
Right. So I will share an abridged history lesson in about 40 words. This is Danilo, who tweets in, the naming dispute began when Macedonia declared independence from Yugoslavia in 1991 and chose Republic of Macedonia as its official name. Greece immediately opposed the usage of the term Macedonia, citing exclusive historic claim to Macedonian heritage and iridescent fears, which brings us to today, Vera. What does the name Macedonia mean to you?
Thank you, first of all, for having me on this show, Malika. The name means a lot to everyone. I've just told you your name, you've told me my name. It is an issue of identity, first of all. And I'd just like to point out that this name issue is far more than just a name issue. It concerns the identity of an entire people who are worldwide 15 million. It concerns their history and their language. These are cultural rights, and these rights have a status in the world, in international law and in human rights, as something most important. The right to self-determination gives a people the right to choose who they are and to choose their own political development as well as their cultural development. The right to self-determination is a right above all rights in international law, and no one and no government has the right to waive that right for that people. So when we're talking about the name, it's a very, if we take only the name, we're putting aside the referendum and what has happened so far. I've done my PhD on this issue, and my PhD thesis was called The Importance of Being Macedonian, the Origins and Consequences of the Name Issue between Greece and Macedonia. And one thing that is very important to have in mind is that the name issue is far than just...
It's more than what you call yourself,
Yes.
and that's what we were asking. Boyan, what did you want to say? Go ahead.
I would say that we are, together with Vera, again Macedonians, after this agreement has been signed. So this agreement does not intend to erase anyone's identity. To the contrary.
Boyan, go one step back. This agreement. Tell us about the agreement.
Yeah. Well, the agreement comes after 27 years of dispute between Greece and Macedonia over the name, as you already mentioned. The name issue started in 1991 when we declared independence and when we applied for membership to the United Nations. The United Nations put a condition to accept us in membership, and that condition was to open negotiations over the name issue. And those negotiations lasted without any result, without any tangible result, for 27 years. And that name dispute directly affected the membership of our country to the most powerful and most important alliances, NATO and European Union, which are strategic goal of our governments, all of the governments, and which is a strategic goal of our people. 75% of the Macedonian citizens would like to see our country in EU and NATO.
All right. So, Panos, Vera says this is more than about a name. But for Greece, if the Republic of Macedonia was called something completely different, if it didn't have Macedonia in the title, would there be any objections from Greeks for that country being allowed to be part of the EU?
No, I don't suppose there would.
So it is about the name then?
I totally agree with Vera. A name is all about identity. The problem here is that we have incompatible perceptions of identity. We have incompatible national narratives. Macedonians or many Macedonians have come to believe that they have been in the area since the beginning of time, which is not the case. We've even had some excesses, particularly under the nationalist government of Mr. Nikola Gruevski. And I understand Vera has served in his office. We had Alexander the Great being used as a national symbol in Macedonia, which is frankly, it's all nonsense, because Slavs arrived in the area about 1,000 years after Alexander the Great was already dead.
Panos, what has that got to do with today and a particular country trying to get into the EU? I want to bring in a comment from a guest that Aljazeera was talking to a little while ago, trying to explain what it means when a country takes a specific name, the Republic of Macedonia. Have a listen to what was said.
When these Macedonians travel abroad, are they really going to introduce themselves saying, I'm a Macedonian of Slavic background and my language is Slavic and I really have nothing to do with Alexander the Great? These things are difficult to guarantee. Why didn't they pick another name, like America, for example?
All right, which is why we're here. Panos, go ahead. Why didn't they pick another name? Vera, I hear you. Let me just get Panos first.
Now, I was talking about conflicting national narratives, and this is the other side. This is the other national narrative. Greeks have not reconciled themselves to the idea that the geographic region of Macedonia, you just showed the map only a few minutes ago, and it was very, very revealing. So they have not come to terms with the idea that this huge geographic region, until only, 100 years ago, was an ethnic mosaic. Even the part of Macedonia, which is now part of Greece, was an ethnic mosaic, of which ethnic Greeks were not even a majority.
Excuse me.
Yes, go on.
I think this is really important what you're saying. The agreement that we are now having on the table tries to make a compromise between the two national narratives. So practically, the Greek narrative needs to face the reality that there is a country on the north and that there are Macedonians that call themselves Macedonians, and up to the point Republic of Macedonia would need to face the reality that there is a wider region and there are other people that feel Macedonians as a result of their regional identity, and that they connect their identity with Alexander the Great. So this agreement is an attempt.
If you ask me, I do really believe that this is a genuine and honest compromise, what was agreed between the Macedonian Prime Minister Zaev and the Greek Prime Minister Tsipras. I think it is a genuine compromise. However, an agreement, in order to be useful, needs to be practical as well. And if you have the majority of Macedonians and the majority of Greeks rejecting the agreement, it doesn't really matter what I think, does it?
All right.
I like that you said that actually there, gentlemen, both of you, that issue. I want to bring in this, and Vera, I know you've been trying to jump into that conversation there, but I want to bring in two of our community members first. So this is James, who is interested in this topic and yet seems to think that this dispute, as he calls it, is stupid. He says Greece's position that the name somehow cast aspersions or aspirations on Greek territory is a strange position to take, but Greece holds their keys to EU membership, so this act of appeasement is relatively minor and can help Macedonia to join the EU. And the appeasement he means is this referendum. On the other hand, though, Danilo here tweets in the recent referendum in Macedonia that we just saw this weekend, however, demonstrated a refusal on the side of Macedonian voters to endorse a name change. The low turnout delivered a blow to the Prime Minister's government and to the process of ending the long-standing dispute with Greece. So there's disagreement, Vera, on...
This is completely not true.
I know, but I already kind of know your position on this. I wanted to hear what Vera thinks, because there seems to be disagreement on what these numbers actually mean. Right. The numbers of turnout, the numbers of those who then voted in favor, who did turn out to vote. What's your take on that?
Just to backtrack, well, I will answer that right now. So the overwhelming majority of the Macedonian population eligible to vote boycotted this referendum because, first of all, let's make it clear, this boycott, their boycott was not about the NATO membership or EU membership. This boycott was to say, we do not accept that someone denies our name, identity, language, and history, and this is what the agreement does, and I will get to the agreement in a second. The agreement, first of all, establishes a
wrong.
Let me just finish. I'm sorry, I didn't interrupt you. The agreement establishes a commission which will look into the history books of the schools in Macedonia and will revise them. This is what Hitler did to the Jews. I'm really sorry, but this agreement... I want to backtrack. I want to just explain something.
Boyan, slow down a second. Vera, I do not understand what you're saying. So start very simply.
Okay.
Where are we bringing the history books into the referendum? Tell me how those two connect.
So the agreement, in its Article 7 or 8, I believe it's 8, it establishes a commission which would look into the history of the two countries and which would have the competence to revise the history and the textbooks and other auxiliary materials such as maps within the country.
So you say that this might possibly happen?
Oh, this will happen because this commission has already been established and it has the right. I'm sorry. It's the same thing. So let me quote to you. I'm sorry. Raphael Lemkin, who coined the word genocide and who drafted the first genocide convention in 1948, had an entire part dedicated to cultural genocide. Within it, Raphael Lemkin talked about what is cultural genocide. It's a plan. It's a plan that would like to erase the cultural feelings and language of a country. This is exactly what the agreement aims to do. There is no place for a history, a language, and an identity in a bilateral agreement between two countries. This is cultural genocide, and I invite...
I hear where you're going. This is a very severe suggestion that this is going to happen. Boyan is a special advisor to the current administration. Boyan, go ahead.
I think, first of all, it's not true that majority of the people rejected the agreement. You know, if we don't miss votes in favor of the agreement. We miss votes against the agreement. These numbers of 610 people in favor of the agreement are enough for
Boyan,
supporting.
I just want to make sure that we get facts very clear here. the turnout was 36%.
Yeah, exactly.
The turnout.
But
Not
the turnout,
even
yes.
Yeah, so you didn't even get 36% of the turnout.
Yeah, but
So
you know
only
that number.
Only
That
36%
number.
of Macedonians from the Republic of Macedonia, the total, cared enough to actually go out and vote.
Yeah, because the biggest party boycotted for one particular reason. The biggest opposition party boycotted this referendum because they knew they're going to lose if they go out and vote. Otherwise, they would certainly go out and vote and win the referendum.
But they didn't. So Boyan, I'm not sure we're going around in circles because we know how many people voted. They were voting on this. Do you support EU and NATO membership by accepting the deal between Macedonia and Greece? Very clear, very simple. Most of the people who turned out said, yes, we do support it, but not enough people turned out. You had to hit 50% and you didn't.
But these numbers,
and the big problem is
are
the agreement
enough
in this
to win
referendum
any
question.
elections. There was no idea supported this much.
Sounds like you're changing the rules as you go along. Malika, where do you want to go next?
So I hear what everyone is saying, but online, though, there is still a push to figure out whether or not this is worth the NATO and EU membership. So this is Jens Stoltenberg, the NATO chief, who says, I welcome the yes vote in this referendum. I urge all political leaders and parties to engage constructively and responsibly to seize this historic opportunity. NATO's door is open, but all national procedures have to be completed. He, though, got a response from someone online who's a bit skeptical. Boris says, are you serious? The Macedonia referendum is invalid as less than 50% voted. You're talking about respecting all national procedures. How about you respect that the referendum is not a historic opportunity, but a massive failure? So, Boyan, I actually wanted to go back to you with this because keeping in mind your position that there was a majority of the people who did vote who want this, there's still many people in your country who don't. And of course, the Prime Minister has to represent all of them. How will your party and your government go about making sure that you have these people on board?
Well, first of all, our next step is to talk and discuss with all the MPs in the parliament individually and to try in the upcoming days to reach the two-thirds majority vote, because they all know that 610,000 people are quite enough to vote a full absolute majority in the parliament. So it's a very big number, although we don't have the threshold. For example, I will illustrate that
yes, but
election.
Many of those are Albanian, ethnic Albanians, that they're not going to vote for Zoran Zaev ever. So,
there is a possibility. There is a possibility for a wide coalition of all the parties for EU and NATO. Coalition for EU and NATO, all the parties who support this agreement.
So, and I should say, Zoran Zaev is the Prime Minister of the Republic of Macedonia. Vera?
Yeah. Just on that note that Boyan mentioned, the opposition parties, there is rumor that that they're stalling now. So in order to convince, with various means, including using the carrot and the stick, these political party members of parliament which would vote for the agreement. Now, I want to backtrack a little bit and respond to what Panos was saying regarding the history. I'd like to clarify for the population here, the international population, that there are two schools of thought on the ancient Macedonian Empire. One school of thought is led by Richard Hammond, who is in
So Vera, I'm just going to ask you, why is this relevant to where we go now after a referendum that didn't reach 50%? For Macedonia to change its name. Tell me in a sentence why it's relevant.
It is relevant because I want to bring up why it is such a touchy issue, this identity for the Macedonians, because it happens to be part of also a history that happened 100 years ago or so, when let me just clarify that Greece...
We have so much time.
We do.
And we've had it,
we do.
Right?
Yes.
So you tell me why in a sentence, why this is so dear to you, why you're so passionate about, but in a sentence, because I can't come to history class with you.
Right. Eugene Borza, who was the other school of thought, who says the Macedonians were never Greeks, he says one thing that is very important. Is that the language no one ever knew.
Panos, let Vera finish her sentence, and then we'll move on.
No one knew the language, and we still do not know to this day the language that Alexander the Great of the Macedonian Empire spoke to his general.
Maybe he never spoke any language.
He spoke, and there are Greek documents
we know what language we speak.
All right,
We
so now-
exactly, and maybe
So guess.
that language is the
Time out, guess.
Macedonian language.
All right, time out, guess.
And
No,
the Macedonian language is
when you-
acknowledged by
This is the one thing that has not been researched yet, and I think this is why Greece is so bent on changing history and making Macedonians accept something that is beneath their dignity and that is a complete denial of their fundamental basic rights.
Boyan,
so that they can have
Panos, Vera,
exclusivity
Boyan,
over
I'm not
this.
calling your names just for fun. I'm calling your names for a pause. If you were watching the show at the beginning just thinking, hey, it's just about a name change, now you can hear why there is so much debate and about the history behind it. Vera, you didn't make your point, but people can go and research and find out for themselves a little bit more after this program because we only have so much time. Malika.
I will go to this tweet next from Thomas, who says Macedonian nationalists seem to fool themselves if they think that by saying no long enough, they'll be able to get a better deal. Rejecting this deal will only be beneficial to the Greek nationalists who, as part of the EU and NATO, clearly have the upper hand. So I think I know what Vera thinks about this. I actually want to give this to you, Panos, because this person brings up Greek nationalists who will use this to their advantage.
I think he's got it absolutely right. There is a nationalist wing in this country. It's quite strong. The current government has had great difficulties trying to sell the agreement to the public, as indeed had the Macedonian government equal difficulties trying to sell the agreement to its own public, and that shows that it's more or less a genuine compromise. So, yes, of course, there are national myths on both sides, and as is always the case in all international disputes, the extremes on both sides just feed each other. The extremists in Macedonia feed the extremists in Greece and vice versa. And I can name a number of other international disputes and much more serious ones where this is the case. Now, I'm pretty sure what Vera has been saying in the last few minutes has gained Greek nationalists quite a few points if they're watching us.
Let me just play a couple of comments following the referendum that's just happened about the idea of accepting the name change in order to join the EU. This is what people on the street were saying, or a little slice of what they were saying. Have a look.
The referendum was held and people expressed their opinion. I think more than 650,000 citizens who said what they think about joining NATO and the European Union is enough.
The campaign that was promoting the yes vote put an emphasis on European values and the European way of life. But if we look at the time since Prime Minister Zaev took power, the people who promoted this are not true representatives of those values.
Panos, you could say this whole situation has come about because Greece didn't like the way that the Republic of Macedonia decided to call its name. So on the streets in Greece, what is the temperature that you're feeling in terms of the results of this referendum? How are Greeks thinking?
I think it's more relief than anything else, because I think a majority, rightly or wrongly, a majority of Greeks were against the agreement because they feel it infringes their own heritage. I don't believe that the agreement does infringe the Greek heritage, but I do think that there have been periods in recent Macedonian history, particularly between 2006 and 2016, that some quite ridiculous attempts were made to infringe Greek heritage, like trying to claim the whole of Macedonian heritage for the current state that is known as Macedonia, and also hinting at some territorial claims as well.
Can I add something to that? I'm really sorry, but if the Greeks really wanted to be Macedonians, then why didn't they call themselves as such 3,000 years ago and today? And why was the region Macedonia, why was the word Macedonia taboo and denied for 100 years? The region Macedonia, as you saw it in the map previously, has been recognized as such, and the Macedonian people have been
We also had in this conversation Boyan Maricic and Panos Polozoidis. We're talking about the referendum to rename the Republic of Macedonia. It failed. It didn't happen, and this is the conversation that's resulted from that. Certainly the one we're having on the stream. Malika?
Inder here from Danilo, who says, though unlikely to succeed, it remains to be seen if the Prime Minister will secure the necessary majority in Parliament and ratify this agreement. And if he fails, Macedonia will hold parliamentary elections.
Guests, thank you very much for joining us. We will always be online. You can find us at 8 Stream on Twitter. Take care.